Brilliant. So we've started the broadcast. I'll give it just a few moments so everyone can connect and join the session. Now, if you're already in the session, our wonderful attendees, do please remember, if you want to join in on today's conversation, do make sure to use the chat box below. My colleague Ishan is there and he's happy to help you with anything you may need, or if you want to sort of join in talking about today's subject. Likewise, if you have any questions at all, do please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom call. You can use this to ask us any questions for the end of today's session. Now I see everyone's joining in, so I think we'll get started. So hello and welcome back to iSpy 360's webinar series. My name is Frederick and I am your host. And today's Future Friday session is about how to be an eco-realtor hero, looking at climate change and its effect on the planet and how real estate agents can sort of make a difference in their day-to-day lives. Now today, I'm joined by Michael Braungart, who is a professor at the Leuphana University Lüneburg and founder of the EPEA, the Environmental Protection and Encouragement Agency in Hamburg, Germany, the cradle of Cradle to Cradle. He is also co-founder of McDonough Braungart Design Chemistry, MBDC, which is in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he is founder of the Hamburger Environmental Institute, HUI. For decades, Professor Dr. Michael Braungart has pioneered the cradle-to-cradle design concept. He has worked with a number of organizations and companies across a range of industries and has developed tools for designing eco-effective products, business systems, and intelligent materials cooling. In 2019, Michael Braungart was awarded the Golden Bloom von Wright, the Golden Flower of Wright, the oldest environmental protection award in Germany for his work. So he's an absolutely incredible guest and we're overwhelmed to have him with us. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the first thing that I really wanted to ask you was when we talk about climate change, this is a term we're all really familiar with. But would you be able to tell us just a little bit more about what exactly climate change is?
So first of all, people now try to limit the global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is a nightmare because the planet is destroying itself already. So we need to come up with a different goal. We need to come up with another carbon dioxide concentration which equals the same one which we had on this planet at 1900. In 2100, we need to come up with the same concentration because the half-time of carbon dioxide is more than 800 years. So we need to get it actively back. So we need to absorb it, we get it out of the atmosphere instead of just minimizing the impact because the Greenland ice is disappearing now. The permafrost is destroying it. We lose permafrost right now in Russia, or the Antarctica is disappearing. So we need to act now because otherwise we just slow down the collapse of the system. And the climate change means because of trace gases like carbon dioxide, we are heating up the planet. It's called the greenhouse effect. And just it means massive destruction with planet soil erosion, loss of hundreds and hundreds of species just per hour. So it's really critical that we need to act.
Now, given that renewable sources provide only a small percentage of our energy and that nuclear power is so expensive, what can we realistically do to move away from fossil fuels as soon as possible?
First of all, we have more than 20,000 times more input on solar input than we would ever need. It's only the question how to harvest it. This is from today on, everybody who listens to me here should decide to put solar panels on real estate wherever it's possible, but with a new business model. Because when you buy the stuff, you become owner of toxic waste. But when you buy 20 years of harvesting photons, you can use the best solar panels, not the cheapest stuff. Otherwise, Europe is just doing waste management for Chinese toxic waste. We analyzed European solar panels. They still have 93% of their capacity after 19 years. The Chinese ones lose half of their capacity in the first 5 years. So over a period of 20 years, the European solar panels are 40% cheaper. Yeah. So, but we need to change the business model, and their real estate is critical for that.
Now, in your opinion, how will measures to cut carbon emissions affect the lives of individuals, particularly in terms of sort of cost?
First of all, we need to look from a global perspective. Just in Hamburg here, we have a copper mill which makes 4 times more waste than all the municipal waste of Europe. Just one copper mill. And when we now do carbon taxing or carbon pricing, then we will lose this copper mill here, and we are proud to minimize our carbon footprint. But then the copper is made in Kazakhstan under terrible environmental conditions, and so we don't win anything. So we need to look from a global perspective.
Fantastic. Now, will taking action now against climate change make our lives better or safer, or will it only really make a difference to future generations?
Now, first of all, it generates a lot of jobs. We can now use 40 years of blame and shame as an innovation machine, where we can make much better buildings. Yeah? But overall, I think your basic question behind it, how to minimize our impact, is the wrong question. Because for being less bad, we are too many people. We need to learn how to be good for this planet. This is why we need to get the carbon dioxide actively out of, and we need to make sure that we rebuild topsoil. For example, in the last 150 years, the world, the whole planet lost 1/3 of all the agricultural space by soil erosion. So we need to rebuild soil, and more than half of all the carbon is in soil, not in oil. So we need to come up with a complete different way to put carbon back into soil. If we just would have 4 promille of carbon adding to this topsoil, we could compensate all our carbon emissions of this planet just easily. So because we need to look from a beneficial footprint. It's not about minimizing our footprint. Here, people think they're protecting the environment when they reduce a little bit their energy consumption, if they reduce their water use or their waste production. But we are not protecting, we are only minimizing damage. Frederick, if I beat my child only 5 times instead of 10 times, do I protect my child? I only minimize damage. But cities like London want to be climate neutral. This is pretty perverse. Yeah. And it's just fun. The emperor is naked. You can only be climate neutral when you don't exist. Yeah. Did you ever see a climate neutral tree? Yeah. Yeah. So a tree is good for the climate. So we need to make buildings like trees, buildings which support life instead of just minimizing impact. For being less bad, we have far too many people. And this means we can now use 40 years of blame and shame as an opportunity, specifically for real estate, because more than half of the waste is connected to buildings. Yeah? So this is by far the most relevant part of our human activities.
Do you think the individual can do anything to combat climate change?
Oh, yeah, sure.
But come down to sort of political will? Yeah,
for example, we have such a perverse form of agriculture that it takes 10 calories for 1 calorie of food, 10 calories of energy. So if you want to minimize your carbon footprint, you can just take the elevator, because it only takes 2 calories to move you by the elevator compared to 10 calories by taking the stairs. So you can minimize your carbon footprint by just taking the elevator. And then you die a little earlier, you can minimize your carbon footprint even more in that logic. No, we need to really first say, instead of trying to save energy, we need to say what is healthy air. Asthma in UK is by far the most relevant children's disease, because indoor air quality is 3 to 8 times worse than outside urban air in London. So people are sealing buildings here to try to save energy, but first they need to say what is the right thing. So, and this is healthy air in a building. We need to make buildings, and we can do so now, where indoor air quality is better than outside air. And we see it in the Netherlands that the absentee rate is 20% lower than in a building which has normal air quality. So people feel just better to be in a building where indoor air quality is better. So if we just look at the energy side of the Einstein equation, yeah, then we will not really solve that problem because the material part is far more critical. Look, the energy side we will handle by the sun, but we don't have enough meteorites coming in, so definitely we need to look for the material side far more. And sure, this is about buildings, yeah, real estate. But today, look, it's much easier than when I was your age. It was mostly about feeling responsible or guilt management, avoiding, minimizing. So we were driven by moral behavior, but I can tell you, not just for Germans, ethical behavior disappears immediately under stress. Yeah. So now, people like you, for you, it's more important to be respected in a social network than even earning money. Yeah. You want to be proud of what you're doing. So when you make toxic buildings, you're just an idiot. So I find more than 2,800 chemicals in human milk, in breast milk, and one third comes from buildings. Yeah. So there's not one sample of in the last 36 years where you could sell human milk as drinking milk. Yeah. So one third of the contamination comes from buildings. So I would love to make buildings which are designed for human milk. Yeah. So how do you want to be so stupid? We are these buildings are chemical harassment. Yeah? So why don't we make much better buildings? And I learned it when I got a request by Google, yeah, where the owners of Google want to make sure that they live in buildings where indoor air quality is better than outside air. And this is where we can learn that our European discussion about the environment now leads to competitive advantages. Yeah.
Incredible. Now, I know that about the Kyoto Protocol, but some of our viewers may not know about it. Would you be able to tell us a little about it and whether it has or will have any impact on climate change?
Yeah, in '93 there's a city in Japan which is called Kyoto. Yeah, and there, the first time people really agreed about how to deal with uh, greenhouse gas emissions. But it was more a coyote than a Kyoto Treaty in that I was there and I met Al Gore and he said, "Oh, we can't do this to our industry." And he was watering down this contract endlessly. Yeah? So by him, we lost about 20 years for the planet. Yeah? Because he was in, and even this diluted contract, yeah, he didn't get through the Senate. So it was just, just pretending to do this. To a certain extent, Donald Trump is a more honest liar than Al Gore, yeah, because when Donald Trump is talking, it's not true. But the ones who pretend to do something. So later, okay, Al Gore gave us back 5 years later by awareness with his film, The Inconvenient Truth. Yeah? But in this film, he shows that he knew about the cause effect already in kindergarten, basically. But when he was in power for 8 years, he didn't do anything, actually. Yeah? He only pretended to do something. And this is much worse because with Donald Trump, this is a criminal. It's an idiot. He's really, that's one of the most dangerous people. Then you know what you need to do. But if somebody who pretends to be to save the planet actually is not doing anything, it's far more critical. So this Kyoto Treaty, what was its start, and in 2009 there was the ninth climate conference in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and I was there together with Shimon Peres, the president of Israel. Yeah, I was standing in the dark and it was cold, and everybody thought, oh, could it be a little warmer? We were standing for 4 hours in the snow, and they had 40 centimeters of snow. Yeah, so the design, and so the whole conference was a disaster. So it was much better in Paris. So when you know that people are massively damaged by heat, yeah. So we talk about Corona, but there was a heat wave in France where more than 30,000 people died. Yeah, far more than by Corona. And then you learn, okay, we need to do something. Obviously, the frame conditions matter as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really shocking sort of statistics that you see because we sort of, I think, are afraid to look at how the climate change is actually affecting us and the lives it's taking. And actually, it's easier to sort of look elsewhere.
Yeah, but I'm somehow about climate change because I thought in my menopause, these heat waves would be because of my hormone changes. No, it's climate change. Isn't it nicer?
Now,
No, really, we need to act, but it's not like Greta Thunberg, because she says, "Oh, the house is on fire, and we need to. I want you to feel panic. Out of panic, we are not progressive. We need to have a clear plan. We need to say, look, in 10 years, we will only use plastic, which is made out of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In 10 years, we will only use fuels, which are made out of the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere. We will use carbon dioxide. We can freeze it out at minus 70 degrees Celsius, 78 degrees Celsius. You can freeze out carbon dioxide and you can make methanol with it. I do this in Dubai, and so we can definitely show how the future can look like. But just to be a little less bad doesn't help. It starts with this poor definition of sustainability. If I ask you, Frederick, how is your relationship with your government? When you say it's sustainable, then I'm really sorry for you. It's like compostable. So, and basically, true innovation is not sustainable. It starts with this very sad definition from 1986, the Brundtland definition, to meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future ones. But you tell your children that you don't want to compromise their needs. Don't you want to be good for your children? So it's more about religion. In Islamic and Christian religion, it says you are evil. And Frederick, for you, honestly, it might be true. And only God can redeem you. So you cannot be good. You can only be less bad. And your highest goal is to be neutral. Because only God can redeem you. But I want to be good for the climate. I don't want to be child neutral. I want to be good for my children. So we need to change the paradigm at the beginning. We need to learn to become native to this planet. We need to learn to make buildings which are cleaning the air, not just being a little less bad. I just analyzed in a Dutch city of 100,000 people, the kindergartens, when the fine dust concentration is so high that if these kindergartens would be outside, 16 kindergartens, they all needed to be closed because the fine dust concentration in the kindergarten is much higher than it's legally allowed in Europe outside. So we need to learn how to make really healthy things instead of less bad stuff. And this is where we need to learn how to become native to this planet. We cannot delegate it to some aborigines. It's up to us. And we can make stuff where you're happy. Look, we worked on a project in China where you use the agricultural space, and just by lifting the building, you get more agricultural space by the walls than you had before. So we have houses where people can live, and it's not about minimizing our impact, it's about a beneficial impact. We can be good, we don't need to be less bad.
do you think then that are there any benefits to climate change?
First of all, no, we need to stop climate change because we cannot oversee. The planet is destroying systematically. Sure, when we have climate change, we don't need to heat so much anymore, so we can minimize our carbon footprint. But already now, globally, we need to cool far more buildings than we need them. So when climatizing means normally to cool buildings, not to heat them. It's only our northern perspective. But the global perspective is a nightmare. Look, if climate change continues, it will double the needs for air conditioning in India, which means that we will have twice as much energy consumption in the whole United States as right now. So we need to take it out of the atmosphere, but we need to come up with different business models, where we actively, where we learn to be good for this planet, where we can make buildings which clean the air, which clean water, which support biosphere. Right now, our buildings are amazingly primitive compared to the potential what a tree has. So let's make buildings like trees, buildings which support life. You can see that there is a foundation called Common Land which I'm supporting strongly in the Netherlands. They are making out of the most terrible eroded land paradises, common land. So we can be good for this planet. And so we can rebuild topsoil. We can basically look at somebody and say, oh, instead of Cinderella, how could you cut off your toes to minimize your footprint? No, no, let's have a big footprint, but make it a wetland. Yeah. So let's celebrate life. Look at humans and say, nice that you're here, Frederick. Not could you be 10% less bad? Yeah. Because when you question the existence of people, when you say, Frederick, it's much better you're not here, then you can minimize your carbon footprint, then people become greedy and angry. Normally, when people feel safe, even the poorest of the poor are always generous and friendly. So we reach exactly the opposite. We make them greedy because they said, before you take it, I better have it. Yeah.
Now, I know there are some people out there who may not actually believe climate change is a real thing. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I feel sorry for them. Maybe they should vote for Donald Trump. At a certain point, you can just make fun of people at this point because you can measure it. Look, when we doubled nearly our carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, and everybody understands, look, when oxygen just is a molecule with two atoms. So it only has this opportunity to store energy. But carbon dioxide has three atoms, so it allows to store much more energy in it. This means this is why this planet is heating up. So you can just measure it. It's more that our scientists somehow only get funding as long as they talk about problems. Yeah? So this is, yeah, as long as there's research, nobody needs to do anything. But at a certain point, look, we had Isaac Newton, so we don't need to reinvent gravity. Always, it's just physics what we talk about. Yeah, and sure, I feel sorry for people who still try to question normal physical frame conditions. Yeah, it's just sad because we are losing really valuable time to make a difference.
Now, what would you say are the top 5 things people could just do in their day-to-day life to help sort of
Oh, first
reduce?
of all, one of the most critical things is to look for concrete steel in buildings, because right now there was not one single car ever recycled into a car. We make primitive building steel out of it for concrete. And just if you, whatever you do, just say, hey, how much rare metals do we have in concrete steel? Because because it's downcycling. We have 46 steel alloys in Mercedes, and what we make building steel out of it. Yeah, it's like if you have a beautiful farm animal, you make hamburgers out of it. So it's just look at that. Secondly, ask it for buildings that this building is designed for human milk, for mother's milk. Yeah, so you don't need to. Third is to say, hey, we don't need flooring systems. We only need services here. So we don't need washing machines. We just need 3,000 times of washing. Then the ones who make washing machines can use the best material, not the cheapest one. So when you buy just 10 years of floor packaging insurance, the manufacturer can use stuff which is not stinking and off-gassing because he can use the best materials in it. So just think from a holistic perspective and say, hey, we want to be good for this planet, yeah? Not minimizing damage. And then we have endless. There are only 5 ways to control people to be less bad. Yeah? But there are millions of ways to support people to be good. So it's not like John Elkington originally talks about the triple bottom line. It's a triple top line. Yeah? Can make stuff which is extremely profitable, which is good for society, and which supports the other species on this planet. But it's a question of mindset. And this is why for the selfie generation, I said, uh, yeah, you want to be smart. It's enough when you're making waste, you're just stupid. Yeah? So don't be. So you don't need ethics for that anymore because they can tell you. I did some testing with my students. When you're switching the lane in a traffic jam and on a highway, you're causing 200 times more delay for the people behind you than you can gain as an average. Yeah? And I can tell you when I'm too late, I forget about it. So don't make it an ethical thing because ethics disappears under stress. Make it a quality thing. A building, let's think about holistic quality. And this makes better prices for real estate as well, because who wants to live in a toxic building? And sure, there are 3 certification systems for building quality. It's BREEAM. In UK, it's LEED from United States, and it's DGNB, the German Green Building Council, which basically are dominating these three ones globally. Yeah. And sure, look that you have a building which is certified. Even it's a little funny because they are certifying the silver, gold, and platinum. Think about a society which celebrates platinum. Platinum compounds are as toxic as cyanide. Yeah? So a society which really thinks that the highest value is a toxic heavy metal, yeah, is basically committed to do suicide, basically commit suicide. Yeah? Now, when I would certify with whatever termite, rabbit, and gorilla maybe, but not with toxic heavy metals. Yeah. But
Much more
overall, these
friendly.
certification systems are really, really worth for and they free investors from liabilities as well, because in the future, people will sue you when they get ill. And sure, you can do very simple things. We developed carpets which are not just not stinking, but which are actively absorbing fine dust. By Corona in UK, people will lose about 12 days till the end of the year, and this is a nightmare. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but by fine dust, we are losing 5.5 years. Yeah, so this is So it's really relevant to say, hey, look, we want to have a healthy building. Yeah? It matters for us. Yeah? Every breath you take, you're inhaling fine dust. So simple things to protect yourself. Take any type of laser printer out of your office. I just looked for an autopsy of a person, 44-year-old family father, 3 children, doing home office. And here next to his, at the left side, he had a laser printer. He was working on his computer, and here was just he was eating the whole time because he was working at home. But he died of a stroke, and I analyzed his body, and I found tonneau dust all over his body, and his fat inside looked like snow in April, basically. So it was all black over that, yeah. And sure, yeah. So we definitely need to say, hey, what is really healthy, yeah. And laser printers are the worst for all of the people. And inkjet printers, whatever companies it is, are not causing unhealthy emissions, but laser printers take them out of your office, because I have 1,352 people who suffer from emissions from laser printers and got seriously ill. So if I would not be honest if I wouldn't tell you about this. It's quite simple. You can really make a difference. Yeah.
Now, if the government could declare a state of emergency right now, what policies would you suggest to make an instant impact?
I would not talk about the state of emergency because, yeah, I would say it's time to act. Yeah, let's have a clear plan. Let's really plan what we want to do in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years. And the first thing is really we need a different form of agriculture. Yeah, and we need to have buildings which are part of urban agriculture. When you're growing corn, you lose between 11 and 30 tons of topsoil per hectare in a year just by growing corn, and we make biofuels with it. The first thing what I really would do is I would stop the use of palm oil, because this is the worst nightmare. 1 hectare of palm oil plantation is 70 tons of carbon in it. 1 hectare of of rainforest has 8,000 tons of palm oil in it. So I would stop immediately importing food, soy and other stuff and corn from Latin America, because Europe is causing the loss of 600,000 square kilometers every year from Latin America, because they burn down the rainforest, then they can harvest twice, and then they need to burn the next part. So we need to learn to feed our farm animals without importing soy or corn from Latin America. This is the size of France. We are importing just. So there are things which we can do quickly if we really want to be serious and want to make a difference. But on the other side, we need to have a systematic plan. We need to rebuild an agriculture which rebuilds soil. Can you imagine how much we actually hate to be on this planet? We can see, maybe Frederick, is see you are sensitive, you really want to make a difference. But look, people like to eat organic. People like you, organic food, yeah, sure, and it's better, much better than conventional one. Yeah, in UK is famous and has a high rate. But look, there's not one organic label which allows that my own feces, my own materials can go back. Every day I need to pick up 2 grams of phosphate for my bones, my teeth. I cannot store energy in my body, and I need to release it to the environment. And phosphate is far more critical than oil. Yeah. And we can only live like jellyfish in the ocean if we don't have phosphate and picking it up. And and can you imagine there's not one organic label, yeah, whatever it is, which allows that my own pee can go back. Yeah. And I would ask, hey, we need to make a difference. I did a nice video in Brazil, which is called Give Pee a Chance. Yeah. Because we need to get phosphorus back, and 80% of the phosphorus is in our liquid feces, yeah, in our pee. Yeah. So, but I learned it when I was working for 2 years in China. When you're invited for dinner in China, till people expect you today to stay after dinner till you use the toilet because you're invited for dinner, not for stealing nutrients. So we need to learn that we are part of the whole thing. Yeah. Here we are afraid. We said, hey, it's better we are not here. But it's the opposite. Yeah. And we really want to celebrate life on this planet. But in real estate is the most critical part, but it's the best opportunity for that. So don't seal buildings to save energy before you're sure that the air quality in the building is healthy. This is really what matters. And you can see from certification that in the buildings certification have indoor air measurements. Oh, by the way, I brought you this one here. Can you imagine? This is a mask.
Actually, I've got my one here.
People aware, yeah, but people have this Chinese plastic stuff. Yeah, and can you imagine when you inhale it, you have 2,000 particles of microplastic per day just by this mask. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can trace it in your brain. Yeah, so it accumulates in our brain, and it will lead to behavior changes. We are picking up just every week the weight of a credit card as microplastic by our food and our inhalation. Yeah. So how can we be so stupid to wear masks? Yeah. So we need to have cotton masks. Yeah, which are organic, non-treated cotton, and this that we can inhale.
That's what my one is. All cotton.
Yeah, that's 10,000 times better. And it's important that we don't leave because we don't never get the microplastic out of our brain anymore. It stays there and it accumulates there. And we see, at least for animals, that they have massive behavior changes when they inhale microplastic. Yeah, and as well, the laser printer is microplastic, or all because it's a plastic with some iron metal in it, which is then melted on the paper. Basically, it's a microplastic problem as well.
So where do you see the planet and sort of its response to the climate crisis going in the next 15 years or so? If you can sort of skip ahead to the future, where do you think we'll be?
Well, it depends on us. It depends specifically on the Europeans. So they need to see, first of all, the same stuff can be made somewhere much cheaper. So we need to come up with different business models. Nobody needs a machine. You only need the plastic which comes out of the machine. When you're selling the machine, it can be copied now in 3 months. And then we are competing with our own technologies. And I see, for example, one ventilator from a company in southern Germany. It doesn't need any maintenance for more than 10 years, and now competing with its own copy, which falls apart after 2 years. Yeah. And so it even cannibalizes the image. So why should you sell a ventilator? Why do you sell air conditioning when people just need the service of using it? So the whole building can become a materials bank, and then these materials become services. You just buy 30 years of looking through insurance instead of buying in the window. Then you can make by far the best window. By the way, until today, nobody ever recycled a window in a window. Yeah, it was always downcycled. This is where I said, hey, I love Donald Trump because he's so much more honest liar than, than all these people talk about sustainability, which is not true. Out of a mobile phone, 41 rare elements, not one of the real rare ones is regained. The maximum of 9 is regained from 41 elements. And the material side, as I said, is much more critical. So it's a part of ecologism, we pretended. But look, we are just, yeah, we take on the challenge, and UK is doing it as well, still under this negative thing, yeah, of climate neutral. No, look, it took me 6 years to convince Philips with my colleagues that nobody needs LED lights. You only need light performance. Yeah, then it saves 40% of costs for Rotterdam. And you can learn this in real estate, that it may save massively in costs when you just sell the service of LEDs instead of selling the LED itself. These LEDs last for 50,000 years. You cannot, 50,000 hours, sorry. And so they last forever. Yeah. So this, you cannot sell them, because otherwise you never know what happens with the stuff, and they're too expensive to invest. But when you just sell the performance, light performance, yeah, and we see this now happening all over Europe, but it took me 6 years. Yeah. So learn to be a little more patient, because otherwise, yeah, you will give up too early. It's up to you to make a difference, and I'm quite optimistic. Yeah. So, but don't panic, because out of panic you will just be frustrated. And look, it took me 18 years to design a leather which is compostable. It took me 24 years to have paper which you can burn in your fireplaces. Look, we need to look here in Germany and still all over Europe, we still face these neo-Nazi idiots. Yeah. But at a certain point, we need to learn how to love our enemies even. Yeah. And now we have paper, yeah, which you can burn safely. And they like to burn books. Now they can burn books safely. Isn't it nice? So, and sure, look, they're in the traditional logic of minimizing impact, they're better for the environment, because they don't have hair, they're bald, yeah. So they need much less shampoo, and they don't need warm water, because they don't need to wash their hair, yeah. So you can do something. When we enter an airplane, yeah, and you first go to the toilet, yeah, to empty your digestion system, then you can save 5 tons of kerosene just from London Heathrow to New York. Yeah? So you can do something to be less bad. But I want to be good, not less bad.
Yes, yes, exactly. Now, my last question for you today concerns our audience, so predominantly real estate agents. In your opinion, what do you think realtors can do in their day-to-day lives to help against climate change when they're at work?
Oh, first of all, definitely there is no reason to do any climatization system with fossil materials anymore. The stuff is there. Yeah, I'm using a fuel cell for heating and making electricity in my buildings. Yeah. So there's no need. So this is where they can start immediately. Secondly, they can insist on a certification for the building, because ISITS, BREEAM, LEED, or DGNB, these are the leading certification systems, because this frees himself as well from liability problems. And third, he can insist on healthy air quality, because otherwise we save the climate and we get ill by that. This doesn't help us. But overall, look, in London, yeah, the species diversity is 3 times higher than in the surrounding agricultural area. So don't feel guilty for being in real estate. In real estate, we can make buildings which one facade can grow as much protein as 80 hectares on 1 hectare, as much as 80 hectares of corn. Yeah. So algae can be far more productive. So the future of real estate is just beginning. Yeah. We can grow mushrooms. Yeah. So most 60% of the food which people need in the city can be generated in the building itself. Yeah. So just let's begin. All the knowledge is there, the expertise is there, and whenever you want, I have hundreds of students who can back you up with PhDs or masters. So there's no excuse for not doing anything anymore. Yeah. We can back you up. And look, as you mentioned, I don't need to get recognition anymore. I have so many honorary doctorships or awards. I'm a hero of the planet by Time magazine, whatever. It doesn't matter. I can just support you. I can be just, like Madonna would say, I can be just the material boy for the real estate industry to make sure that you use safe and healthy materials which are designed from cradle to cradle, either to go into the biosphere or the technosphere. There's no waste anymore. But this is not about zero waste, because when you still think about zero waste, you still think about waste. It's like when I tell you, don't think about how Donald Trump looks without his artificial hair. You think about exactly that. Yeah? So think about everything being beneficial. Let's make buildings which support life. Yeah? Buildings. Yeah, and then so it's a little more about self-esteem from real estate business as well. Be proud of what you're doing, because you can be an opportunity for this planet. Yeah? So let's celebrate your business, because then you learn to really to be beneficial for the others as well.
Incredible. Really wise words. I love it. Now, we have had a few questions in from our audience. Would it be all right for me to ask you some?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Fantastic. So our first question is, how did your passion for the environment start?
Oh, I fell in love with my chemistry teacher when I was 16. She was 24. So I was the speaker of my class, and so I was teaching my fellow students chemistry. And then the Glover Rome report came up about limits to growth. And this is where I studied chemistry wherever I could do so, because this is what the material side and the energy side is first about materials. Carbon dioxide is a material, not energy per se. So I studied in London as well, at Imperial College, wherever I could learn anything for 17 different universities. Then I joined Greenpeace, and I was blocking pipes and climbing chimneys and using rubber boats to protest. But today, it's no time not to protest, it's time to do things. Yeah. So this is hard. But because I was in love with my chemistry teacher, I never thought that I would be morally better than anybody else. I just think a building which makes you unhealthy, yeah, it's just a stupid building. So a little self-esteem is enough. So don't come with this blame and shame stuff. When I was 17, I analyzed a TV set, and I identified 4,360 different chemicals in a TV set. And I asked a very simple question: do you want to watch BBC, or do you want to own 4,360 different chemicals? Then I was taken out of the competition because I was claimed to be an eco-communist. Yeah. But today, all these products or services, yeah, you really want to own toxic waste? No, you need the service of using the stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And so this is why it just gives me such a strong position, because I never thought that I would be the good one and you're the bad guy. No, I said, hey, let's talk about, look, if you have a simple parking ticket, a simple coupon in the supermarket, and you touch it, the thermal paper or a bus ticket, yeah, you have immediately 2 dozens of chemicals in your bloodstream, because the stuff is never made for skin contact. So this is declaring bankruptcy. Yeah, this is polypropylene, and with the worst additives and the worst pigments in it, and people use it. Yeah, this makes me just angry. Yeah. So I don't need ethics. I don't need, hey, wait a minute. We need to come up with a different thing. Yeah. And so I asked my students, hey, I want to see another mask. And they now come up with a mask which is perfectly biodegradable. Yeah. So you can just throw it away wherever you are. And it even contains seeds from rare plants. So you can support biosphere. Yeah. So we can be good. We don't need to be less bad. Yeah.
That's an incredible idea, masks with seeds in. That's really sort of like, it's not just doing the bare minimum, it's going above and beyond.
Yeah.
So my last question for today that we've had asked in is, have you ever created or discovered anything which has had a major impact on the environment?
Oh, sure. But I'm working on a beneficial impact, not in minimizing. So I started with very simple things like carpets, which are cleaning the air with fabrics. This is the first fabric which is edible. Yeah. So when you are sitting on your sofa next to a beautiful girl, you get a little nervous and it gets abraded. But can you imagine, in the European Union, people think the parts which they cut off when they make a sofa are so toxic, yeah, that you need to burn them as hazardous waste. Yeah. I said, hey, that cannot be the case. So I have been showing 60 times on TV, mostly in Japan, how you can eat these fabrics actually. Yeah. So they're edible. It makes them 20% cheaper. The pieces you can cut off can go into gardening. They can replace peat. Yeah. So from my side, I was the one who showed that it's not necessary to use chlorine to bleach pulp. Yeah. At this time, I was the only one in 1985. Yeah, I can show you films. I said, so this is pure utopia, and people were so angry. Yeah, and then, oh, yeah. And today it's a common technique. Or I was with Greenpeace. I was proving that we don't need ozone depleting chemicals in there. Siemens said, if Braungart is right, do it. These all the refrigerators are dangerous to explode. Today it's a common technique, and not one of these refrigerators ever exploded. Yeah. Or I was swimming in the North Sea to block ships which were burning toxic waste. Yeah, and we could stop it by showing the stuff accumulates in the North Sea. Yeah. It mostly in the British fishery areas. Yeah. Where all these fish was contaminated, and we could prove it, and we could stop it for the fish and for the people who eating the fish as well. So I achieved a lot in working with my colleagues at EPEA, by teaching in Rotterdam, in Delft, in Stanford, in Harvard, in Princeton, at MIT, and but we are still too slow. Yeah. Yeah. So we really need to come up and don't make recycling of stuff which is not intended to be recycled. So don't use recycled paper for gypsum boards, for example, because they stink. Yeah. Yeah. So we need to have paper which is designed for the biosphere. Yeah. And so just I'm pretty okay with what I achieved in my life, but overall, if we don't go on, if it's not you, Frederick, and your colleagues is picking it up, then I just rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. So it doesn't help me. So I make you responsible for my future success. So
And I'll go forward with it.
So without you, the young generations, this is why I'm now back at university, and you can see the book Cradle to Cradle, which I published with an American architect, William McDonough. Yeah, Davon is now taken into the Random House books for most important books of this planet. Next scientific books, next to Charles Darwin about the origin of species, Cradle to Cradle. But I can tell you, there's a long way to go still. Yeah. So, and I still don't have a Nobel Prize. So if you can do something for me for that, it would be nice.
Oh, well, Michael, thank you so much for coming along to today's session. It's been really informative. I've learned above and beyond a whole planet's worth of information. So thank you so much for giving us such a wonderful insight into this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Frederick, for your really brilliant questions and your positive mindset. Yeah, because this is what it needs. Yeah. When people feel safe, they are not destroying buildings. So we can make, as I mentioned, we can make paint now, and I would ask you to look for that, which is pro-microbial, not antimicrobial, which supports life. Because I lost my son 7 years ago, pretty much at your age. He died of an infect in a hospital. Like 30,000 other people in Germany just every year. Yeah. So this is why we use all these stupid antibiotics, and at the end, the terrorists survive. Yeah. So we need to make pro-microbial stuff. So we need microbes which we put in paint, which actively can eat up the viruses. So they can clean up the air. They can be beneficial. Like a tree is cleaning the air, not minimizing damage. So thanks, and you make me optimistic that we will be successful. Thanks for all the efforts.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having us. And I'm sure our audience have also learned a whole amount. So we're all deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Now, for everyone watching, that concludes our Future Friday session this week. We will be back again next Tuesday for our Tips Tuesday session. So do make sure to come back for that. Now, until then, please do stay safe and stay healthy out there, and have a really wonderful weekend. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.